Well, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think today is Wednesday after the long weekend. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet before, my name is Libby Davis, and I'm a program manager here at Forte. And specifically, I have the great pleasure of working with our current MBA students and making sure that they get all sorts of really helpful and impactful programming events and activities to really continue to build their expertise and to explore their interest in business. So thanks everyone for being here, and thank you for joining us for our Conquer Your Career Marketing and Brand Management panel. For those of you who might be joining us at one of these events for the first time, this event is part of our Conquer Your Career virtual series, which really seeks to offer an inside look at what it's like to be a woman with an MBA working in various fields. And obviously today we have the great pleasure of speaking to some folks that have found their career fit in marketing and brand management. So let's get started. So you are all here today because you are interested in that area of, in those areas of business, excuse me. And so those who work in marketing really have an eye for consumer need and satisfaction. And they oftentimes are interacting with many different business units to make sure that the voice of the consumer is always top of mind and being heard throughout all different business processes. So like I mentioned, our panelists today have really found their fit in these areas of business, and we'll use kind of the next 45 minutes to discuss the knowledge, skills, and abilities that really help launch someone into this career path. So I know you're all excited to meet our panelists. And so we're going to get started. So I'm first going to introduce you to Mercedes Castro. Mercedes is a digital marketing manager at Brave Health, and she comes to us from Georgetown University, McDonough School of Business, graduating in 2018. So Mercedes, I'd love to kind of bring the conversation over to you to have you tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yes, definitely. Really happy to be here. Great to see you all, or at least see your names on the screen. As Libby mentioned, I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida right now. I went to my undergrad at the University of Florida. That was in Gainesville, Florida, where I majored in marketing and I had a minor in entrepreneurship. After graduating from there, I had a couple customer-facing roles. So one, I was working in retail management at Nordstrom, and then I was also working as a front desk manager at a Kimpton hotel property. So those were really great roles in terms of just understanding customer needs out on the spot. So afterwards, I really wanted to progress in marketing, and I found a role at an advertising agency that was a startup. I had a variety of roles there because it was a startup, which was a great experience, and mainly really started loving digital marketing. At that time, social media was really growing, and I saw a big opportunity in that area. And also, things like SEO was being brought up for the first time. So I thought that I wanted to really further my education in the area, and I applied to business school, ultimately landed in DC, going to Georgetown. While I was there, I was in student government. I was the VP of Marketing and Communications, and then I was also a Forte Fellow. So really, really proud of that. And then since graduating, I was living in Maryland working for Goodwill Industries International, which is like the headquarter for Goodwills. And then afterwards, I was working at Amazon. I moved down to Jacksonville, worked remotely at Amazon. And then now I am working at Brave Health. So a few different industries, but all marketing functions throughout those. So great to be talking to you.
That is fantastic. We are really excited to learn more about your experiences, Mercedes. And I know that I and the rest of our folks here today are really pumped to hear more about your journey in marketing and the things that you've learned along the way. So thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce our next panelist. Her name is Zhana Edwards, and Zhana is the Director of Marketing Strategy at CVS Health. She comes to us from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, where she graduated with her MBA in 2019. So Zhana, welcome. We'd love to learn more about your career journey, so I'll let you take it away.
Yes, thank you. I'm Zhana, and let's see, I started off my undergrad at George Mason University, where I majored in marketing and minored in econ. After graduation, I spent 8 years living in DC and New York, running conferences and events, so doing trade shows, award shows, and I was last at the Interactive Advertising Bureau, which is a trade association for digital advertising. And I just thought, wow, I think I want to go into this. I think the conferences that I'm planning for, I want to do these. I actually want to be a part of this. So I decided to go back to school where I landed at the Darden School of Business, where I was a Forte Fellow, a Consortium Fellow, and in my second year, I was president of the Black Business Students Association. There I discovered that marketing is such a broad word and term, and there's so much that you can do. I originally wanted to go in and do brand management. I landed in tech marketing, and now I'm in healthcare marketing. So post Darden, well, after my internship at Expedia, I decided I wanted to re-recruit, and I landed at Wayfair right after school, where I did paid social advertising and then organic social marketing. And then I came over to CVS, where I started off doing influencer marketing, and now I work in brand strategy.
I love it, and I can't wait to hear more about it. It's going to be great. Well, thank you, Jana. We are super pumped for our conversation today. And then lastly, I'm pleased to introduce you to Becca. Becca Katz is a brand manager at Quest Nutrition, or a brand manager for Quest Nutrition at Simply Good Foods. She comes to us from the University of California, Los Angeles, Anderson School of Management, and is a graduating member of the class of 2018. So Becca, I'll turn it over to you and feel free to tell us a little bit more.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Becca Katz. I did my undergrad at NYU. I focused in psychology, marketing, creative writing. And as far as career trajectory goes, my little sister did a corporate rotational program straight out of undergrad. Her career trajectory has been extremely linear. My experience was anything but linear. So I worked in a couple of different marketing adjacent roles, but nothing that was true marketing. So I started out at an ad agency doing account management. I think I was making $33,000 a year living in New York City, which was rough. I worked in phone sales for a year, and then I ended up at a market research company called Forrester, which was the last step in my pre-MBA journey. When it came time to choose a business school, I was deciding between a school on the East Coast and a school on the West Coast, which was UCLA Anderson. And I decided if I'm going to be paying all this money for an education, I should probably get a vacation as well. Excellent quality of life decision, excellent career decision. Had a great experience at UCLA. Coming out of business school, I worked at General Mills for 2 years, primarily on the Yoplait yogurt brand. I then transitioned to the company Bragg. It's an apple cider vinegar company that also sells things like nutritional yeast, liquid aminos. So I was at Bragg for 3 years. And now I'm coming up on about a year and a half at Quest Nutrition, probably most well known for our protein bars, but we also have a bevy of other high protein snacks. And I am leading the candy and cookies business for Quest.
Candy and cookies sound great, and high protein snacks. All
high
good
protein, low
things.
sugar, low net carb, all the things.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I love it. Well, I'm excited to learn more. And I think it's going to be a really great conversation today. So just full disclosure for our folks here today, we may have a fourth panelist joining us, but I think some things have come up. So just in case you see a new face, they are our fourth panelist, and we'll take a brief moment to introduce them at that time. But anyway, we'll get the conversation started with our amazing panelists here today. And I'm actually going to start off with a question for Becca. So Becca, you talked a lot about your amazing path to where you are now at Simply Good Foods and working on Quest Nutrition. Could you tell us a little bit more about what a typical day looks like for you, and how does your work have an impact at the organization?
Yes, absolutely. And I will start off by saying there's no one typical day. I think part of being a brand manager is being an all-encompassing fixer. For example, just the other day, we had a case of Quest protein bars come in that we wanted to get out to the sales team for sales samples to introduce them to our new products. And every single bar in the case was smushed. So my team and I, for hours, were de-smushing the bars. So that there's no task too small. But I would say in general, my favorite part of this job is working on new product innovation. And as a brand manager, I'm really the hub of the wheel, and I work with all of the different cross-functional teams to make a product come to life. So, for example, we are working on launching a new high-protein, low-sugar candy. And I'm not going to talk about the specifics of the candy, but just in your mind, imagine your favorite unhealthy candy, and imagine if you can make it high protein and low sugar. So first off, I would mine market data and work with the consumer insights team to conduct consumer research to understand what candies are growing, where is their white space, where does Quest really have a right to win. Then I would work with the R&D team to understand what can we actually make, can we deliver on the brand guardrails in terms of macronutrients, in terms of taste, like can we actually create this to our standards. I would work with operations to understand, can we manufacture this? I would bring in finance to let me know, can we manufacture this profitably? We work with the creative team. What should packaging look like on shelf? How do we really want to show up? And then I work with my partners in communications to understand, how do we promote this item so that people actually know about it and make it seem appealing and create a campaign that's really on brand for the company. In terms of how to impact the broader company, I would say, I feel like my work has an impact every single day. It's really easy to see the impact of your work in this role. So I am a big Ninja Creamy user. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but it's a $200 machine where you can put protein shake in it and spin it around, and you're left with a healthy ice cream at home. And I saw that there was an opportunity for Quest to really promote itself in the Ninja Creamy space. I spoke to my boss, and then I would say a couple weeks later, we had a whole social media and influencer campaign where we challenged our content creators to make a 50 grams of protein, high protein ice cream recipe in their Ninja Creamies. It garnered above average engagement. And that happened so quickly just as a result of an idea I had when I was taking a shower that morning, you know? Also, like when I was working at Bragg, we had a product called nutritional yeast. It has a high protein claim on front. I had been hearing a lot of talk about complete protein, which nutritional yeast happens to be. And I decided that we should change the high protein claim to good source of complete protein. Mentioned it to my boss, ran a couple consumer surveys, proved that consumers were more receptive to a complete protein claim versus just a regular protein claim. And within a couple months, we had that complete protein claim on packaging. If you see Bragg nutritional yeast in stores, you'll see that it now says 5 grams of complete protein. So in terms of really seeing the results of your work, I think brand management is one of the best careers you can go into.
I think that's a great way to frame it. And I love that you get to work on these brands that I've, seen in the grocery store or used in my home. And I'll be looking for the words complete protein on some of the items in my kitchen moving forward, and know that it was you that brought it apart or brought it to market. So that's great. That's wonderful. I am really excited to hear more. So we are going to continue on with our conversation. And so I think the next question is going to be going to Mercedes. So Mercedes, as a marketing professional, how do you connect with your consumers? We've talked a little bit about some of the strategies that Becca was using to learn more about what they think and to drive decision making, but how are you doing it, and how do you ensure that you're keeping up with the latest trends?
Yeah, so first of all, can't understate enough how important it is to just really put yourself in consumers' shoes and understand what they value, what they're experiencing, what challenges they're facing, how they behave. It's so important, and I feel like that's a big reason why a lot of us are in marketing. I know Becca was speaking about psychology, and that's really what I found marketing to be, kind of like the intersection of business and psychology. So just can't understate that enough, that really to stay ahead, understanding your customers is number one. But in terms of how you do that, well, first, thinking about the various channels that you communicate and utilize with your customers right now, and then thinking about how you can extract data from that, I think is really important. So, seeing if there's an opportunity to, improve upon something that customers are already experiencing when it comes to the channels that they're on, or what products of yours they're using. I think it's really also important to take a step back and not just look at what data you have on hand, but to look at what else is out there in a more macro environment. So for example, I think it's really important to subscribe to different publications, different blogs, industry news, so that you can have an understanding for, not just what your customers are doing, but what's happening in the industry or in the economy as a whole, so that you can really look around the corner and see, how that might impact or not impact your business. But it's important as marketers to really just know what's coming up down the line so that you can stay ahead. So I think some ways to do that: number one, subscribing to different publications, industry news, like I had mentioned. I think, there's a lot of great influencers out there, whether it be on social media or whether it be like on Substack, different news channels or kind of communication channels where they can post some of their thought leadership. I think it's a great way to stay up to date with that. And then also, I think, attending conferences, doing things like this, just even putting into Google digital marketing trends or marketing trends, and really keeping tabs on that. I've found Google alerts and Google Trends to be really helpful. So it's more of a push versus pull. You're not really looking at the information. You kind of already get it in your inbox. So just various ways to really kind of monitor and keep track of what trends are and what people are saying. There's also, great tools for that, like social listening tools. If you have a budget to work with, one tool that I used was Talkwalker, which was really great in terms of understanding what people are saying about your product or similar products. I also think that looking up hashtags is a great way to stay up to date on what people are talking about. So just a variety of different ways, but I would say that using different methods is going to be a great approach, rather than really relying on one thing. And also looking at your industry and your product, but also the greater industry and the economy as a whole, I think is important.
I think those are all great things to mention. And I appreciate that you're kind of doing a combination of things that are coming to you as the marketer and things that you're seeking out. So it's not overly one way or one way or the other, which is pretty fantastic. So moving on to our next question for Zhana, what are some unique opportunities that come from a career in marketing or brand management? What are some challenges, and how might these challenges be overcome?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, marketing is such a broad term and can mean a lot of things. So I think that's one of the best opportunities that comes with a career in marketing, is that you can do a lot of different things. I am 5 years out of Darden, and I counted how many roles I've had. I've had 4 out of the 5 years. I have, at each company I've been at, I have switched at least one time into something new and different. And I think that comes with the fact that marketing can be sliced into a bunch of different things. You can either be on a channel, or you can be in strategy, or you could be in data analytics. And I think it's having the ability to like understand how to dive into a problem and understand a root cause. If someone can really if someone knows that you know how to do that, they're always willing to give you the opportunity to shift into something different. I think that also can be a bit of a double-edged sword in what some of the challenges could be. And one thing that I know I faced throughout my career is making sure that I've always wanted to be a very general marketer. I wanted to understand all different parts of marketing. And my fear has always been being stuck into a specific role or known for being a specific thing. And so sometimes it takes that work of working with executive leaders, learning how to dig into problems, learning, like Mercedes said, about the different parts of the industry and demonstrating that knowledge so that people understand you can do more than just that one thing. thing. So for me, like I started off in social media. I didn't want to keep being in social media. It's a fun job, but like I said, I want to be more well-rounded. And so I had to work extra hard to get out of that perception of Zhana does social media really well. And then you said some things to overcome that. I think there's the demonstrating that knowledge. I think you can do that through taking on new and different projects. So for me, I was always willing to take on a project that was maybe a little different or maybe just somewhat close to what I was doing, but I could add on a new flair to it. I think also starting a relationship with with senior leaders and talking through about what you want to do with your career. So for me, at both companies that I've been at since Darden, I've been very open about what I want my career goals to be and what opportunities I think would be right for me. And that has been the thing that has opened those doors for me, as well as when those opportunities popped up, those leaders already knew that that was something I was interested in. I had demonstrated that I could do the job. And so they helped move me over.
I was taking many notes during your during your answer, and I think it's, you know, you touched on a lot of really important things, you know, finding new opportunities to challenge yourself, do something slightly different that's kind of unique but continues to help you build and develop your skill set, and then, you know, advocating for what you see your future as. I think that's fantastic, and like setting that intention early so that when those opportunities are available, the higher ups know that Zhana is the person we want to call. I think that's fantastic.
I think, can I add one more thing too? I just
Yes.
want to also say, even if you know for sure, like say I wanted to stay in social, don't close the door to opportunities that come your way. You never know what could be behind that door and how your current experience can really lend itself to something new. So I would also say, even if you know your path, be open to the opportunities that come to you.
A fantastic reminder for sure. And actually, our next question is going to you as well, Zhana. So we've talked a little bit about opportunities and challenges. We've talked about the, you know, what the path, how to kind of get on the path to leadership. But could you maybe expand a little bit more about the skills that you see folks needing to really be successful leaders in marketing? And then to what extent, you know, has your personal leadership style evolved as you've kind of had these different roles and as you've been, you know, continuing 5 years post MBA?
Yeah, and I think Becca and Mercedes also touched on some of these skills already, but I'll reiterate some of them. I think one, as we all know, like marketers, we're storytellers. So you need to be able to understand how to tell a story and tell a story to different people. What I have learned, especially as I've continued to level up in my career, is that sometimes we're telling stories to other marketers and we're speaking marketing speak, but we actually need to start to learn how to speak to people who work in finance or people who work in general management. So learning how to tell your story in a bunch of different ways. And that's really about also understanding who your audience is, because it's not always going to be your senior director or your CMO. Sometimes it's going to be somebody who works on the merchant side and they don't know what you mean by ROAS. So understanding how you tell that story. So that also means understanding what the data means. So ROAS, yes, it means return on ad spend, but what does return on ad spend really mean? How do you break that down? So understanding what is the data telling you, not just simply taking that number and plopping it up on a slide. So that all goes together. I think also Mercedes touched on it when she talked about stepping into other people's shoes. I think there's an element of learning how to be empathetic to people who are not quite you. So how do you do that? So Mercedes touched on some of these things, like going out to stores and shopping, talking to different people. What we have to realize is that the US is so diverse these days. And so we're not always going to be marketing to who we are. So learning how to step into someone else's shoes and not think about, we're also kind of tainted as marketers, like how we use social media is not how everybody else uses social media. So how do you figure out how you can be empathetic and step into someone else's shoes? When I think about my leadership style and how it's changed, I think, to be honest, COVID is the thing that really changed my leadership style and how I managed my team. I've always been one who's like, let you go off, you do your job, empower somebody to do what works well for them. I give them the what I need and they figure out the how, as long as it's within certain boundaries. But I think after COVID, what I have realized is that mm, uh, work and life don't have this hard cutoff. And sometimes what's going on in life leads into work. So again, that empathy, how do you bring empathy to being a leader and not being a task manager? How do you make sure that that person can actually show up and feel good about the work that they're doing? So one is that empowering, one is asking them questions as well, and allowing them to ask you questions. I think also showing when you're wrong, admitting when you're wrong, or admitting when you don't know. Just showing how you can be a human to other people and you're not just this person with this title. I think all those things really, really were necessary in those COVID years because people really needed somebody else, especially those who were stuck at home alone or just stuck at home, really needed somebody to listen to them through those 8 hours a day that they were at work. Yeah, so I think that's how my leadership style has evolved.
I think that all of that is very, very helpful. And I love that you kind of you've been reflecting on like this time that was very, as everyone says, unprecedented, and how that's kind of helped you see maybe areas that you could adjust. And again, like leading with that empathy, I think is so key. And clearly you've been able to do that. So thank you, Zhana. Thank you for sharing that.
Libby, can I build on something Zhana said really quick?
Absolutely.
So to Zhana's point about the importance of understanding that the US is diverse and not all of our consumers are exactly like us. I had a pretty humbling experience during my internship at General Mills, which is in Minneapolis. I was coming off of my first year in business school in Los Angeles. People in LA are kind of crazy. They put all different kinds of supplements and weird concoctions into their bodies and are very into wellness. And I convinced my boss at General Mills that a black charcoal yogurt was going to crush it in market. And I begged him to let me test this in focus groups without thinking that, okay, the people who are in our focus groups in Minneapolis are Midwestern moms. And anyway, my black charcoal yogurt idea just completely bombed. It was very humbling, a great reminder that I am not my consumer. And I think it was good that I started out my career with that insight versus having to wait until later on to learn it.
I love that you have that example at the ready, because I think those are the moments where you learn something new and unique. And clearly, you know, that was a key moment for you right after business school. So I'm from Minnesota originally, so that's why I was like, yeah, I could see that. But I'm really glad that you were able to that you shared that and that you had that experience. And well, not that it didn't go well, but you know, that you learned from it and grew from it. And the next question is actually, we can start with Becca and then we'll go to Mercedes. And so we've kind of talked about, you know, what it's like to be in this role, what it's like to be a leader in this space, what it takes to be successful in marketing and brand management. We talked about how it's a really broad kind of area with lots of different opportunities. So now let's talk a little bit more about kind of thinking back to your MBA and thinking back to, you know, the different experiences that you had then. Let's really focus on the recruitment process for these type of roles. So Becca and Mercedes, again, we'll start with Becca. Can you describe the recruitment process that you went through for marketing and brand management roles? It's kind of a long question. What strategies or tactics did you use to prepare for those interviews? And then what recommendations do you have for folks who want to stand out from the crowd during that recruitment process? So again, sorry, I know it's a long question, but let me know if you need me to repeat anything.
Yeah, so I guess I would just set expectations that I think MBA internship recruiting was one of the hardest I've ever worked in my adult life. Like, get ready to grind. It's rough in these streets, but it's all going to be worth it. So recruitment was a pretty lengthy process. Started with general informational interviews with alumni at the companies you're interested in. Of course, you had to submit cover letters and applications. They typically asked a range of behavioral questions and case questions, just around things like, what's your favorite brand and why? Testing concepts like, do you understand what product positioning is? Does your background translate to this role? And that doesn't mean that you necessarily had to work in marketing previously. You just need to come up with a good story and rationale for how your existing skills transfer to a marketing role. And And I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of the question?
No problem. The second part of the question is, what strategies or tactics did you use to prepare for MBA level interviews?
Yes, thank you. So again, it was a grind. I was practicing with friends and classmates every free chance I got. I was going to all of the networking events. Like as a kid, my mom was always taking me to these free events at the library and free book club and free concert. Like she knew how to take advantage of the free resources. And like I transferred my mom and the library to my business school experience. Like take advantage of all the free resources. You have an amazing career center at your disposal. I used up all of my allocated hours with my career advisor, like really take advantage of that. As far as cover letters go, I would say in marketing, you may have an opportunity to be a bit more creative than you would be in other fields. So I remember the first line of my General Mills cover letter was something like, when I was little, it was my dream job to be a supermarket cashier. And although my career aspirations have changed slightly since then, my innate passion for the food business has not. Something like that, like show that you can be a little creative, try to stand out, and don't underestimate the value of informational interviews again by reaching out from alumni at the company. I think that's really what got me my first internship.
I love that line. I think that line is great.
That too. And kind of on that note, Becca, just in other ways, thinking of standing out and helping yourself stand out from the pack. I think those little areas where you can put your personality or be a little bit more creative are great opportunities to take. And then in addition to that, when you're doing your TMAY or tell me about yourself, you know, that first question that you typically get, to weave some kind of a memorable story into that, just because, you know, I was here, then went here, then went here. It's, you know, somebody's eyes can kind of glaze over, but if you have a memorable story that interviewer will remember, I think that's a nice touch. Then just more tactical level when it comes to your responses. If it's a behavioral question, I learned about PAR, problem, action, result. And SMART, you know, specific, memorable, measurable, actionable. Anyway, forgot maybe the last two, but basically to have those written down, remind yourself so that when you are answering questions or telling your story, you don't lose track of what you're actually answering, and, you know, start blabbing and, you know, talking about whatever. So that's something that really helped me stay on track. And then I also think really doing your company research, making sure that you know the company inside and out as much as you can, whether that be through informational interviews, as Becca was saying, looking up, you know, Glassdoor interviews from people who have worked there, looking at the company website, looking at press releases, really making sure that you have like a 360-degree view of the company. So if you get asked any of those questions, you're not caught off guard. And then so that you can also really tell a very compelling why you want to work there. And I also lastly think that's very helpful when it comes to the question part of the interview. When they say, do you have any questions for me? You can ahead of time think of some really thoughtful questions about maybe how their products are doing, or maybe you saw in a press release that they opened in that they launched in a market and then they had to pull back. Maybe you can ask about that, but it really shows the interviewer that you are committing time and that you're interested, genuinely interested in the company. So, you know, it may be time consuming, but it will be worth it when it hits and when it lands with the interviewer.
All fantastic tips. Thank you both, Mercedes and Becca, for that. I think all of that is very true. And I love that, you know, Becca, you also mentioned that this is a unique time where you have access to all of these different resources, and to really take advantage of all of that. And I think, Mercedes, you provided some really great, you know, tactical, technical, strategic ways that folks can kind of approach preparing for those interviews, which I think is very, very helpful. Next question, we're going to go back to Mercedes and Becca. Mercedes, we'll start with you this time, if that's okay. So the question is, how did you decide what companies to pursue in this MBA recruitment process? Do you really have to love the product to be successful in your role? And we'll start with you, Mercedes.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So first hitting at the former, how did I decide what companies that I wanted to interview for? When it came for, my internship during MBA, or even more recently when I got my most recent role, I really took a step back and I mapped out what I thought my strengths were, my interests were, and doing some kind of an exercise like that will pull out things that you haven't even thought of. So, I feel that when you're in MBA, you do a lot of group work and you're able to hear from others things that they found very valuable working with you on that maybe you hadn't thought of before. So really taking a step back to look at your accomplishments, to think about what was the most exciting part of working on this project. Oh, why did I really like that? And you can really pull out your interests and strengths. And then kind of I took that and I mapped it out into different products and industries that interest me. I kind of already knew I really liked technology. I've always really liked technology, but it wasn't until having work experiences that I realized that I wanted to be in healthcare technology. So it's okay if you don't get it on your first try, but at least if you understand what you're interested in, what you want to work around. And that kind of brings me to the latter part of the question about the product. Do you need to love the product? I think it's very helpful to love the product. When I think of that, I think it's even more important to love the company's mission and vision and culture, because you may be working with one product one day and another product the next day, but are you interested in how the company works? Do you find the people that you work with motivating? Do you find that you can grow within the organization? So I feel that those are really important elements in addition to, do you like the actual product? And again, it's not a must, but I think it is helpful to like the product, because then you can have an easier time putting yourself in the customer's shoes and really wrapping your head around like the usage occasion and the culture around the product and all of that. But again, in my opinion, I think it's more important to really be invested in the organization and the culture, and where the company is going.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mercedes. Becca, same question to you.
Yeah, so I knew I was interested in the food business. To Mercedes's point, like it really helps when it's a product or brand that you care about. And I just wasn't as passionate about things like technology as I was about food. So that's where I concentrated my efforts. In terms of how I chose the company, right out of business school, I wanted to go to the biggest company that I could get hired at, because I wanted a company that had the resources to train me properly, whether that's Procter & Gamble, General Mills, Nestle. Like for the first couple years out of undergrad, I think I can't understate the importance of having a good training environment and just having the tools and resources you need to ramp up and learn the rules of the road. I also wouldn't limit yourself based on location. So there were a number of students that I went to school with who didn't want to apply to General Mills, for example, because they didn't want to be in the Midwest. If you can suck it up for a couple years, like if you're investing all of this time and energy into getting the best education and getting the best career, like I would personally take location out of it. And that's how I approached my decision. To the second part of the question, do you really need to love the brand? No, you don't need to love it, but you need to respect it. And for example, like Clorox was a very popular company when I was recruiting, and no one really gets, or I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone. I don't think most people get super excited about cleaning products, but you can appreciate that when there's a stressed parent running around and they have a gazillion things on their to-do list, having a cleaning product they can trust and can turn to that will make their lives like 1% easier, you can appreciate the value in that. And this is similar to the point that Mercedes made earlier about doing your research on the company, but like doing your research on the company, doing your research on the brand, showing that you care about the brand. When I was interviewing for interns, when I worked at General Mills, I would say the number one immediate turnoff for me was when the candidate clearly didn't care about the brand and didn't value the brand and didn't do any research about the brand. And you have to understand that for these brand managers who you're interviewing with, the product you're talking about may be their baby. Like that may be a product that they led the product launch. They did all of the concepting. They came up with the idea. So just tread very carefully in how you speak about the brand and speak about the products. And again, to Mercedes' point, do your research.
I think that's a great way to frame it. You have to respect the product. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Becca and Mercedes. And then I am going to put a question over to Zhana. Zhana, we're kind of talking about life in business school and preparing for graduation. Now let's think about life after business school. So when you reflect back on your first role after graduating with your MBA, how did you establish trust with key stakeholders that you were working with? And what actions did you take to ensure that you went into new projects with confidence?
Yeah, I think so that my key stakeholders were, of course, senior leaders, and then I also had a team coming out of grad school. And so I really had to like get on board, get my team on board with me being their manager. I think we talked a little bit about leadership already, so I won't hammer that in too much. But when we think about like the leadership, I think there's a few things to build trust with them. I think one is meeting and speaking with them early and often, and not always when you need something for them. So what you learn in business school when it comes to the networking is like coffee chats are critical. Keep up that pace of doing coffee chats, especially in your new job. When you get there, you should be spending a good chunk of your time just meeting with people, talking with people, understanding what they're doing. And then when it comes to getting assignments, I think there's coming out of some of these schools, it is you have there's a tendency to want to show that you know it all. You don't, and you don't have to pretend that you do. Learn how to ask questions, ask good clarifying questions, ask them what they want, ask for expectations. Bring people along with you on that journey of getting that project done. What I have seen a lot of, and I feel like I may have done some of this too in my first role, was I'll take the project and maybe I might ask some good questions and then I'll show off the final product. Bring people along on the journey with you, because I think that builds a lot of trust when people feel like they are a part of the process. Even if they're a senior leader, they're not looking for you to know it all. At least I know when I have new people on my team, I'm not looking for you to know it all. I'm looking for you to understand. Can you ask questions? Can you get down to the root of the problem? Can you research this problem? Can you go find the right people to go talk to about this problem? I want to see that you know how to investigate something versus you just showing up and knowing it all. And I think that's what builds trust, is when people feel like you're not going to go off and do your own thing without showing them. And then I think that's really it. And then when it comes to like pulling in your leader, pulling in your team, if you're coming out of school, because there's a good chance some people do come out of school with a team. I think it's kind of the same thing, like showing them that you don't know it all. I came into a team where they were out of undergrad, but they were all data scientists. And I was an ex-event manager with an fresh MBA, showing them that I don't know it all, asking them questions, giving them context for questions so they know that you aren't micromanaging them, but that you're truly curious in the work that they're doing. And then bringing them along, letting them peek behind the curtain of what you're doing. You don't have to be in this ivory tower, like doing your own thing, and they don't know how decisions are being made. Bringing them in also helps them feel a little bit more comfortable with you. And I think also learning a lot from them in the first 90 days versus changing things right away is another big takeaway. I saw a few leaders do that, where they just came in and tried to change a lot of things super early. That never feels good in any role. And so it definitely doesn't feel good when you're fresh out of school and you're jumping in and taking over a team.
I think that's a great thing to mention. Come in and listen and learn for the first 90 days and then kind of move forward from there. I think that's a great lesson. Well, I cannot believe this, but 45 minutes has already gone by so quickly. So as I was hoping we would have time for questions from the audience, but I don't think we will today. So I'm very sorry for folks that have been so thoughtful with their Q&As. But I hope that you were able to learn a lot from our amazing panelists today. I know I certainly did, and I'm very excited for all the different places that the three of you will go, and all the different ways that you'll make an impact. So I just want to be very, very gracious and appreciate you being so thoughtful with your time today. But with that, I want to just mention that for folks who, again, might be new to Forte or new to the Conquer Your Career series, we do have several of these throughout the semester. So we hope that you will join us for our next one, which will be taking place on September 18th. If you're interested in corporate finance as a career and you're kind of exploring marketing, corporate finance, all the things, we hope you'll come and learn a little bit more from our speakers then too. But with that, we will say goodbye for now. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all real soon. Thanks, everyone.